Oh, I guess it's time for a sort of video update. So here's the motor. She's in. Motor and tranny mounts are done. Had to route the turbo behind the motor mount. Got solid aluminum mounts. Just sort of box tubing that's been triangulated down, if you can see, to the cross member. And then the cross member's been notched and reinforced. And the sway bar mounts are just going to be dropped down so they clear the pan. Let's put spacers there. Wiring is the next big deal. And then the turbo clearance with the steering box is that's going to be tricky. But some of the biggest hurdles have been overcome. Well, I got the evo2 kit here. Gonna start mounting that sometime soon. And we got the Driveline, which is 300ZX yoke driveline, and then this is Mercedes driveline to the carrier bearing. So the two have been mated. It's about 15 thousandths a run out. So I don't know how bad the wobble's gonna be. But I don't think it was our welded joint. I think it was this. The Nissan was so low that the exhaust was caved in and the driveline had a big ding in it. And this was the other big score. So this is the automatic pedal and hanger. And then I've got, oh, you can't really see, but I've got manual set out of a W123. I managed to make fit. Master cylinder, everything, or yeah, clutch master cylinder, everything. And then that's all the go fast goodies from the Z car. I'm gonna have to rewire. I have a apexy piggyback, which a lot of people ditch once they go to a full standalone, which is what I have. So I have apexy power FC, but then I also have the SAFC, which is super airflow converter. That's normally just a fuel tuner, no spark control. But the reason I'm keeping it in the system is because I'm running a RB26 computer and it's an RB25 head, so I don't have variable cam timing. So that's what this is. I have an additional window switch to adjust my cam timing. It's just a 12 volt on off signal, and you can set the RPM, and then I have a rev limiter. And then a turbo timer. I got a turbo timer too. But no, the SAFC I keep in the system because it has inputs for the airflow meter, and I'm using a large single VG30 airflow meter, and that way I trick the twin turbo RB26 computer into reading one input, because this is a signal bender and it also splits the inputs. So the SAFC tells the computer, yeah, you've still got twin airflow meters, twin turbos, run as normal. And what it's really doing is it's interpreting the VG30 mass airflow sensor and bending and splitting that input into twin RB26 airflow signals, basically, that the Power FC reads. And it worked great, so I'm going to keep that set up. Body kit leaves a lot to be desired. This is the Duraflex kit. This is a gurney flap, And then it's got the deck lid spoiler too, but there's no mounts or anything. You kind of just gotta do it yourself. So I haven't decided whether I'm going to have like a bracket with an Allen bolt, so the deck lid spoiler is adjustable onto a slotted bracket, or if I'm just going to pop holes in the trunk, slot the holes, and then I could have adjustable struts down here, and then the deck lid spoiler would pivot off of the slots up here. And then once you get it adjusted where you want, you just tighten the mounting bolt there. That's another way. And then obviously the gurney flap will just have, I'm going to glass in some threaded inserts, and then I'm going to put slots in the gurney flap. And then the gurney flap, there is a recess spot in the spoiler, so it'll adjust up flush, or you slide it up, you know. So that's next. I gotta make bumper mounts. The good thing about the flares, at least, is they actually have raised spots. So yeah, I didn't want to drop everything off here. It's all kind of precariously perched, but the arches actually have these raised, if I can get it to focus. It's got these raised spots glassed in that are pretty good, I guess, when compared with the rest of the kit. So I think on those mounting points, if it will focus, but yeah, it's got several of those mounting points, and then I'll just I'm gonna glass in a threaded insert, and then it'll bolt from the backside of the fender into that insert in the flare, and then I'll put a piece of rubber stripping along there. I don't want to glass them in. You know, a lot of people mold them in because the fitment is so bad on these kits. It's a lot more forgiving if you just, you know, fill it with Bondo. But I think I'll just sand it until it's a good fit, and then a rubber gasket between the kit and the metal. I think I'll do the same with the spoiler base, just so it doesn't leak into the trunk. But yeah, this is kind of what you get when you get a Duraflex kit. It came like this. But considering the amount of work required to mount these things, that's kind of like the least of your troubles. I mean, just kind of sand that down, a little bit of spot of filler, you know, compared to all the fact that there's no mounting points, that you have to do all of the mounting points yourself. There's no way to attach this. There's no way to attach this. The bumpers have no mounts whatsoever. So you have to glass in all your own brackets, all your own mounts. You know, it's kind of, I think if you have a little chip here or there, consider yourself lucky. Okay, so anyways, what I was trying to say is the master cylinder has hard line comes out the bottom of that master cylinder, and that goes over to the firewall. I have the hard line, but it's a little bit different on the W123. So it follows along back here, and then it comes out through a hole in the floorboard, which the 201 actually has. There's just a rubber plug there, and then that'll come out just into your transmission tunnel, and then you just make a line over to your slave cylinder. Pretty cool setup. And then there's a hole here, again, the W201 has, and the rubber grommet. So I'll just put that rubber grommet back into the firewall. And then that goes out to the master cylinder on the brakes. So they share a reservoir. But the W123 I would not recommend for a pedal set. It's a lot of work. So you can see the mounting hole is slightly smaller on the 201. So I just slotted the mounting holes, which seems simple enough, but the pivot point is wider too. So I had to air chisel the body seam back. It's hard to see, but it is a lot of hammering to get that pivot point so that it actually will pivot. And then same on the other side. It took a little bit of clearancing there of the air hammer. But I was kind of hip to that already. And also the sensors are different for the brake pedal and stuff, so it's going to take some work too. But you know what? I got this pedal set for free, and I made it work. So we're moving on. So the other thing was the RB25 or 300ZX in this case transmission. I had to get it centered right here in this opening. It's hard to see, but this rear pivot is supposed to be on a bushing in the 300ZX, and I've just got it hard mounted up here. And then it's like a little universal joint remote shifter, and I'll shift it into a fourth. And you can see I had to cut. That looks terrible, but I had to grind down the weld a little bit because it started to hit on this framework. And it was a little bit porous too, but but yeah, I had to shorten about inch and a half out of that linkage so that everything was centered here in the opening. And then this framework here, you see that's a weld because that arm was supposed to go straight. You can see it dead ends because it's staggered, and the other arm is next to it. Because what I did was I cut it an inch and a half, and then I sistered the two side by side and then welded it, because the angles change once you shorten it. You know, otherwise you would have to spread it's kind of an A shape, so otherwise you would have to spread it apart once you shortened it. It was just as easy to sister them side by side and seam weld it. And then the transmission is huge compared to a Mercedes transmission. This is what the Nissan guys call the big box. RB25 big box. You can see how big it is. So part of the transmission tunnel had to be massaged with the air hammer. And what's really neat about these W201 190Es, you see that's just a track with holes, and there was a square threaded nut because these cars came with diesels, manuals, automatics, gas, 4, 5, 6 cylinders. There's probably 20 engine options. So Mercedes just spot welded this track in there with these threaded inserts. Pretty slick. So you can see on my marks, that's where it originally was, and I moved it up for the mounting point on the Nissan transmission. That's solid mounted too. I've got a spacer in there. It's not washers, it's like an actual, I can't really see, but I'll show you. I got a piece of Delrin material, and I just took a hole saw and just made some spacers. So it's got a little bit of give, I suppose, but it's for the most part solid like the motor. Because there isn't much twist in that. I don't really want the transmission to walk anywhere. I mean, it's touching on either side. It's shoehorned in there. So you'll see my driveline is going to go from there to the Mercedes carrier bearing there. It's splined on either end, which means I have to drop the carrier bearing and the flex joint from the rear diff, and then I'll have to put it all together, stab it into the Nissan trans, and then put the whole driveline up to the carrier bearing, which is fine. And then also you can see the steering clearance with my oil pan, which is pretty good. Because See the oil pan comes from there, and it just kind of naturally goes up over it. You can see where I've welded, reinforced cross member. I've got about a 1/2 inch clearance underneath the oil pan. This is the RB26 pan, aluminum pan that originally had a differential cast into it. It's got kind of side kick out oil capacity there. So I don't know if a RB25 sheet metal pan would work, but that's what I had, so it works.